Hey, runners only with Dom Harvey.
Runners Only with Dom Harvey and Max Key. G'day, mate.
How's it going?
Going great. By the way, thank you very much. You're dressed almost as the same colours as my neon sign.
Yeah, thank you. I got the memo on that one. So
I appreciate it. How are you? How are you today?
I'm good, very good.
Yeah.
Yep, working hard.
Cool. How old are you now? What are you, 27?
27. Yeah.
Because I was thinking about you how old were you when your dad became Prime Minister? When we first saw you on stage with the big wide eyes in front of the cameras for the first time, looking really startled. How old were you then?
I was year 9, so I think I was 13
right.
or 14.
Right. Do you have much memory of that? What do you remember about that? First of all, what do you remember about the lead up before that? So your dad's successful in business. You find out he's running for Prime Minister. What does that mean to you as a 12, 13-year-old?
I guess it's like anything. When you're 12, you don't really understand the gravity of anything, and he'd always talked about being Prime Minister, and it was always something he'd really wanted to do, and ever since I can remember. So we moved back to New Zealand when I was year 3, and he became the National Party. He became a member of the National Party then for Helensville. So pretty much since I can remember, he was always in Parliament. So for me, I guess I just grew up with it, so it didn't feel that weird or that big. And I guess
I suppose what I mean is you can't sort of understand what it means exactly. Dad wants to be Prime Minister.
Nah, and it literally wasn't until I have a very clear memory of I was 20, I think, and it was my final trip that I did with Dad as Prime Minister, and we went to China on an official trip, and I'd gone there 4 or 5 times before, and it was the first time we were sitting in the Great Hall of the People, I'm pretty sure, with the Chinese Prime Minister, and I remember sitting there and we're with some very established people in the Chinese government and all of Dad's team. It was the first time I sat there and I was like, wow, I've literally been learning about this guy in economics at uni, and I was sitting there going it was the first time ever I was like, whoa, because when you're 12 to 20 you just grow up with it. It all felt in a weird way quite normal. I guess when we got rid of the security, that felt weird for me. Whereas,
that's right, because you had cops living on in a camper van on your driveway.
Yeah, for 24/7 for 10 years of my life. So for me, when they left, it was weird, because for me, I grew up with it all. Whereas I think for my parents and my sister, they were a bit older, so I think all of that felt quite weird to them. Whereas for me, I just got so accustomed to it. None of it felt weird. It just kind of felt like that. That was just how it always was. If that makes sense.
Were there what sort of, you look back now, and what sort of awesome perks were there? Did you meet the Queen? I saw some photos of you with the All Blacks and things like that.
Yeah, I mean the really cool things during the World Cup final in 2011, we got to go to the changing room after they won, and that was epic. It was a 15-year-old. That was the coolest thing ever.
I suppose you could just say to your dad, I want to meet that person. Someone's in town, say, I don't know, Usher's in town. You can say, Dad, can we meet Usher? And you can probably make it happen.
You probably could. I mean, I feel none of us ever abused the privilege.
Right.
There were always stories going around that people would be like, oh, Max Key said, do you know who I am? But I just never did that. I feel my whole family felt quite, not embarrassed by it, but almost anything that could have been a perk, we try to
steer clear. I suppose you have to, don't you? Because
there'd just
otherwise you're seen as almost abusing the power in a way.
Sort of, yeah. And I just think there'd be things that I would find really embarrassing. Say he picked me up from school, and the police would be outside and they'd pull up right up front, and I'd be like, oh god. Whereas some people would go, oh, you're so lucky you get this. Whereas in my head at the time, I didn't see a lot of the perks as perks, and to me,
of course not.
Yeah,
you just want to be normal, I guess, and fit in.
I guess, yeah, and I think the hard thing was everyone would see stuff like the World Cup or when we met the Queen, but to me, I only got to see my dad every 3 weeks, and he constantly got beat up in the media, and at the end of the day, people might disagree with what he did and his policies, and it's politics. You're going to have polarizing opinions on you.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But for me, it's hard seeing when people feel like that, and so I would have traded any of the perks to not have to go through all that stuff.
Yeah, man, there's so much of that I want to get into, especially the fake news stuff involving you. People's Max Key, do you know who I am? I want to get into all of that, but first of all, I want to go right back. So, were you born in New Zealand or the UK?
No, I was born in Singapore.
Singapore, really? Random.
Yeah.
Is that where your dad was working at the time?
Yep, he'd been there for 8 months,
right.
And then I got born, and then we were there for probably a year and a little bit,
right?
And then we moved to London, and I was there for 5 years, and then we came back to Sydney for a year, and then to New Zealand.
Wow. And so, I mean, you don't know anything different. So I don't know. This is probably a dumb question that you can't even answer. But what was it like being like brought up in like a rich family? No, no, not rich, rich. I think when your dad became prime minister, the paper said he was worth like 50 million, and so Elon Musk wouldn't even bend over to pick that up off the street. But it's a lot of money. It's,
Yeah.
like good upbringing, nice upbringing.
Well,
Like, when did you realize you were from a wealthy family?
I know this probably sounds really bad, but not until I was probably like 20.
Oh, get out!
Nah, because
Get out!
I think mum and dad, both were raised in state homes and they had really tough upbringings. And so I obviously lived in a nice house and went on nice holidays. But mum and dad never like handed me cash. Like, I worked at McDonald's for 4 years, like when dad was prime minister. I was always hustling to like try and make my own money. And I think I was very much like wanting to do my own thing in the world. And, mum and dad, yeah, they always looked after me and provided me and gave me a good education. And, I'm not going to sit here and act like I was anyway struggling, in that sense of the word. But mum and dad weren't the kinds of parents where they just flicked us cash. And if I went, oh, mum, I want a PS5, that, I never had a console.
You had to wait till Christmas.
Even then, they just weren't the kinds of parents that just handed us everything. And I'm really, at the time, it sucked because I did go to, like King's and a nice school, and there were lots of kids that got treated like that. But I guess...
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
So,
because I was thinking from my perspective, so I was growing up in Bahamas North in the 80s, and it's like I'd go to a friend's place and I could tell the friend was richer than me because they had like appliances that I didn't have, like a VHS or a microwave or whatever, or nicer after-school snacks.
yeah.
But did you ever do that? You went to your friend's place and you're like, oh, they don't have as nice a fridge as us.
But see, the thing you got to remember is that whole period where you're like cognitive enough to notice that dad was prime minister, and so he didn't even have a car, and we did nothing flashy because his whole tenure as prime minister, there was this whole criticism that he was really rich and he didn't understand other people. So during that period, they never spent money. Like, we never did anything lavish. Obviously the house was really nice, but they bought that in 2004.
Way before. Yeah, no, I remember your dad, like before he became Prime Minister, saying he was donating all his prime ministerial salary to charity. Do you feel like the tide's changing? Because I know exactly what you're saying, and it was like, I feel like there's two camps of people. There's a smaller camp of people that are like, shit, this guy's done well for himself, he'll be a good Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole lot of other people like, oh God, he's done well for himself, fuck him.
Yeah, I think that's
I feel like it's swinging a bit though, don't you? More towards the positivity side of things than the tall poppy, or not so much?
I mean, I think tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand is really bad, and it's a shame. I do think at the moment, with how the economy's going, I think there's people that are starting to sit there and go, we navigated the global recession last time and came out, we're probably one of the strongest countries, in the world economically after that. So I think there are people now that are starting to be grateful. I just think there's a lot of politicians that go in that, they've never actually worked. And I just don't think they actually understand like how the economy works, or, I'm obviously young, so I'm not sitting here saying I know, everything myself, but I just think, a lot of politicians, I think a lot of them aren't actually there for the right reasons, and a lot of them are just career politicians.
Yeah.
And, I think that's where I really respected Dad was, he went and did it and he walked the talk, and, you talk to him and he's a genius with markets and he understands all that stuff. And, I think he was the best person for the job at that time. So I think there are people now that they're starting to realize that. And, as I said, politics is so polarizing. Say you had $1 million and you put it into curing cancer, there's going to be someone whose mum died of, some other disease or had a brain tumor, and then they're going to go, well, why aren't you funding that? Or, everything you do, it
opens yourself up to scrutiny, of course.
Yeah, well, it's not zero sum. Like, if you do one thing to help one person, it's at the cost of the opportunity cost of not helping someone else. And so, if you raise tax, you piss business owners off, or you anger some people, but you help, so you're constantly, I think it's the one industry where it's very, very difficult to make people like you.
Oh, impossible. Even look at the situation now with Jacinda Ardern. Like, she went from being the most loved and respected Prime Minister, and now that things are getting a little bit tight for people and mortgage rates are going up and the cost of living crisis, the halo's getting a little bit tarnished. Like, everyone turns on you eventually in politics, don't they?
Well, and that's why I think Dad timed leaving at a really good time. He left when he was super popular, and I think, as you said, that tide is shifting where people really respect him. I think they realised he wasn't in it for the ego, and he wasn't there just to be loved forever, and he didn't overstep his kind of mark. I think, to me, he's always said to me, like, a good trader knows, when to hit the bid. And at the same time, to me, that's always just resonated. Like, there's always a right time to make the decision, and you got to move fast, and you got to do what you think's right.
Yeah.
And for him, I think he felt like he had got us through the recession, and that was what he was really interested in. And
yeah, everyone talked about it being a rock star economy here in New Zealand.
Yeah.
That was the phrase that was used.
Yeah. So,
because I loved your dad as Prime Minister from the perspective of a commercial radio broadcaster. Like, he'd come in for a chat, he'd be up for anything, and that was something that he did get quite a bit of criticism for, I guess, in his time. Like, people would call him a goofball or whatever.
Yeah.
Did you ever like tell your dad off? Like,
all the time. Yeah. That, like, all the time. And that's what I'm meaning. Like, imagine you're 15 and, like, dad's doing all the... And everyone's like, oh, you must have thought it was so cool. I was sitting there like, this is so embarrassing. Like, I'm just trying to fit in at high school. And I had dad doing, like... I don't know. Like, I remember when he did the Christmas thing with you guys.
Oh, yeah.
That was a shocker.
Sang a Christmas song. And then there was one thing which I was a little bit unfair, the ponytail thing.
Yeah.
That felt a little mean-spirited. Anyway, yeah, but so the flip side of that, what was he like with you? I'm guessing like you sort of lost your dad for like a really crucial and important decade of your life.
Yeah, well...
I mean, I'm sure he would have been there as much as what he could, but...
Yeah, I think that's where I have like conflicting views on it. There was a phase a few years ago where... I don't know if resentment's the right word, but, I did feel kind of angry at him because, my sister moved away and, it was just me and
Was
mum.
this while he was Prime Minister or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like, I did find it really hard. And I think what I found really tough was I found it hard talking about my mental health because, it's like first question on here, you're saying, oh, what's it like being a rich kid? And what was it like this? And that's the scrutiny I'm constantly under. So then when I sit there and go, oh, I had a tough upbringing, our culture's so like, oh, but you lived in a big house and you got toys. But to me, it's like, that doesn't make you happier. If anything, I think finding happiness is harder because you have a lot of the things that most people spend their life just trying to achieve. But when you've got that all, you actually have to find purpose. But it's hard to sit there and complain about that because people go, why, I'm sleeping in my car. And you're like, well, yeah, true.
Yeah, oh, boo, boo.
Yeah. So I found it really complicated to even talk about it because, say, I sit there and go, I had a hard upbringing. Because I think I did have a hard upbringing. Not in I feel sorry for myself, but it was a very complicated upbringing. I mean, everything I did was in the media. I was constantly scrutinized by people. Everyone was trying to see my downfall, and I was a young boy, and I made mistakes. And everything I did got massively publicly kind of magnified.
In a big way. And, I mean, the only argument I think that people could put up is, well, if you don't like it, don't put yourself out there. But it's like, here you are, you're a teenage boy, you've got an Instagram account. Big fucking deal. So does everyone else the same age.
And that was kind of because everyone turned and said, well, you elicit the attention. But actually what happened was they were writing all that stuff before I even had an Instagram or before I did anything. And I got to a point where it was all happening anyway. So I got to a point going, I didn't choose this. Like, I'm just in this. So then I was like, well, I may as well just do what I want to do. And I got to a point where it was not like rebellious, but I was kind of like, fuck you, I'll do what I want. Like, and so I just started doing everything I enjoyed. And then, I was like, oh, I want to be a DJ. So I went and, did that. And everyone sat there and went, you're eliciting the attention. But it was kind of one of those things where it was happening anyway. So I got to the point where I was like...
Yeah, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, so I was like, why don't I use it to my advantage?
Yeah, sure.
And so...
I really want to get into this because it's like it is really unfair, and I've got firm opinions about that. Like, I think politicians get it. They it's a brutal business.
Brutal.
Like Helen Clark before your dad. Like there was constant speculation about her and her husband and about him being a beard and it being a fake relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
When your dad left, there was some rumours about him having an affair with one of his politicians, and your mum basically said the job on me. Now I think it's even worse for Clark Gayford. It's like,
oh yeah,
there's the thing about the nanny, and people were on WhatsApp to me saying it's true. Here's a picture of her, and I'm like,
yeah.
As much as we'd all like this to be true because it's so salacious, it's probably not.
It won't be, yeah.
And then the home detention thing, it's just it's relentless.
True.
But I think I do think that's unfair because they're just public servants. But when it starts impacting the kids as well, I think that's a next level sort of situation.
Yeah, well, what was interesting about kind of Dad's time as Prime Minister was we were the first family almost in the world where social media was a thing. So social media came in when I was year 13, so 2012. and that was kind of, Dad got in 2010. Oh, no, sorry, 2008. And so we were kind of that first generation where there was a prime minister with kids my age where social media existed. Because with Helen Clark, social media didn't exist, she didn't have kids. The last New Zealand family that had kids was Jenny Shipley.
Right, yeah, that was way before MySpace and Bebo.
Yeah, way before then. So
the only international comparison that I can think of off the top of my head is probably like Obama's
That
kids.
was literally the only, at the time, like in kind of the Western society, that was the only family with a kid. Because think about most people, like Joe Biden, obviously but on the other
his
end...
kids are like 70.
But his kids are like older than my grandparents. No, I'm kidding. I think that, so it was quite an unusual thing where, because say with Obama, there's way more risk for his family. There's a genuine risk that someone comes and tries to assassinate them. So his kids were way under lock. Whereas Dad was kind of like, I don't want to rob you of your childhood, but at the same time, I know how much pressure you're under. And I was just really like, I'm doing this. And it just got to a point where they were like, okay, well, do it then. And it almost created this beast that I hadn't, at the time, I never knew it was going to become what it became. I kind of just wanted an Instagram, and then all of a sudden there were articles But
everything you do becomes a news story. By the way, depressing for those journalists. Imagine doing 3 years of journalism school to then just update Max Key's feed and write a story about that.
It's so boring. Right? There was some funny fact though when Dad was, I think it was in 2017. It was the year after Dad stepped down. That was probably when my profile was the highest, and there were more articles on me than the Labour housing policy. There was 135 articles on me, and there was 95 on Labour's housing. And when you sit there and think I was a first year uni student. Oh no, I was a third year uni student, and there was just nonsense. And I don't know, it's just crazy the clickbait.
Yeah.
What people.
So how I follow you on social media now, and you seem to have a fantastic relationship with your parents.
Yeah.
You play golf with your dad a lot. You're out for dinner with your parents a lot. You even do some business stuff with your dad.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would have always been as present as what he could have been over those years. But what did that look like? You see him once a week, phone call every couple of weeks, text every day.
Do you mean now or then?
No, when he was Prime Minister.
Oh, he'd usually be home on a Sunday, and it was usually he'd get home at 5 or 6, and then he'd be gone kind of in the morning. So I'd probably see him maybe once, twice a week. Oh no, once every week or two. Because some weeks he wouldn't be home. But where he was really good was he would do things where, he might literally catch a flight home at 9 p.m. just to say goodnight, stay the night, and then he'd leave unit for him. So when I was younger, I was really oh, you're never here. But now that I'm older, I'm holy shit, he really made the effort to try. But again, when you're young, it's really hard to have perspective on things like that.
When you're young, I think, especially going through puberty and in your teenage years, it's the whole world revolves around you.
Around you, yeah.
So if your dad's not there, he's spending too much time on his work, and if your Prime Minister rightfully so you probably should. You take it personally.
Yeah, well, there was always the joke that he cared about his BlackBerry more than the family.
BlackBerry? BlackBerry?
Yeah, they always had two on them. It was the little burner phone thing.
Yeah. So did they ever have any hard and fast rules never? Yeah, you can do whatever you want, but never be seen doing drugs or never do this, or is it just they just trusted you to have the common sense to conduct yourself in a?
I feel I'm quite morally sound myself. I don't need my parents. I barely drink now. I didn't drink from January till September this year. I think I did once for my best friend's wedding.
Yeah, that's a journey we've got to get into soon, the jiu-jitsu journey.
Yeah. And I don't know, when I was at high school, I was very into my sport. I was trying to be a pro baseball player. And since I was born in Singapore and London, I started school a year early. I started at 4, whereas he started at 5.
Right.
So I was really young for my year. I finished school when I was 16. But I did school, but I was just I was late May and I was young. So I was almost 2 years young. So I think when I was at school, a lot of the kids were 18 and getting into drinking and girls, and I barely had my driver's license, and I was just really focused on my sport. And so that kind of stuff, I didn't have that many arguments with my parents about, because it just wasn't, I wasn't that into it. And then,
I suppose if you're a parent, you've raised your kid right and then just hope they're going to make the right decisions.
yeah. And I guess, I don't know, it just, obviously I went through a phase maybe when I was like 19 to 22 where I was like drinking and partying, but it's kind of funny, like I have this really bad reputation of being this like DJ party boy, but I'm actually like not loose at all. Like all my friends think I'm a massive pussy. Like I never really drink that often. Like I'm just not into drugs. Like it's just not. I'm actually not like that. I'm actually a bit of a nerd, and it's funny because everyone that meets me, like I'll meet girls and I'll have to meet the parents, and they'll be like, "Oh, you still a party boy?" And I've heard about you, and it's really funny because I'm just not like that.
Yeah.
But I think I just went through that phase on social media where I was like, I'm going to show all the fun bits, and
well, everyone does. It's a
that.
snapshot of people's. It's that top 5% of people's lives.
Yeah, but I think people just wanted to create this image of my head that made them feel better about themselves. Because I mean, even when I was a DJ, I was working at Jardin, which is like the top share brokering company in New Zealand.
What did you study at uni?
I did finance, international business, and property.
Yeah. You can't do both those things, eh? You can't be the party boy and the...
Nah, and so like...
And take it seriously as a 9 to 5.
Well, I was working like 7 till 8,
right?
Like every day, like crazy hours. And then I'd DJ like on Saturday nights, or I'd do a tour. And so that was the thing, was like, I topped classes at uni, like I studied really hard, like tried to be straight A. But I just never, to me, when you're 21, I'm like, who cares about that? So I never posted about that. And there'd always be comments like, oh, go get a job, or like, go get a degree. And I'd be sitting there like, well, I've got two, and, I've got a job. I'm working probably harder than you, but I just got so...
You never clapped back.
No, I just got so numb to it. That was the one thing growing up with it. I'm so, like, someone could walk in here and be like, you're a loser, you're this. And it just doesn't faze me. Like,
it's terrible to get to that point.
It's not good.
One thing your dad was very good at as Prime Minister was the self-deprecating thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of New Zealanders, maybe I'm just projecting here from myself, but I did that in radio because you feel like, well, someone's going to have a jab at me, so I may as well go in first.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that the same for you? It still fucking hurts, though, that stuff.
See,
you're just numb to it now.
I'm so numb to it. I mean, I think there's exceptions to the rule. So if a good friend of mine and someone that I respect calls me out and goes, you're being an asshole, or you're actually like crossing a line, 100% I'll listen.
Yeah.
But if some random troll on the Herald calls me a loser, like, well, cool. Like, that stuff does not have a single drop of impact on me.
Oh, that's good. That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
Because I suppose I got like a little bit of radio fame, like probably didn't start to my 30s.
I have a funny story about that, actually.
Oh, really?
So I came in because remember every year Dad would do Christmas?
Yeah, he'd bring in Christmas gifts, bottle of wine.
Yeah. But I remember I met JJ, Mike and Dom, and you guys signed this like little poster thing for me.
What, did we?
Yeah, and I literally used to have it like on my wall. And
it's still there, come on, don't bullshit.
And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was always like, I met JJ, Mike and Dom.
Yeah, but where I was going with that, it's like, so I became sort of exposed, I guess, to that sort of social media trolling or whatever when I was a grown-ass man. And here you are, you're in your late teens dealing with it. That's fucking difficult. Yeah, I feel like, when you're older, you're probably more emotionally well equipped to deal with it than being a young kid just navigating your way through fucking puberty and going from being a boy to a man.
And that's where I think what I was touching on earlier, where I say like, I feel like my upbringing was complicated. Like I'm not sitting here saying it was harder than anyone else's. I just think it was really different. I mean, there's not many people that go through it. I couldn't talk to anyone and be like, oh, how do I deal with getting abused by 50-year-old men on Facebook? Like, like everywhere I went, people would like scream stuff at me, and it was so polarizing. I'd have, people that were like massive fans and would pay to come to my shows and pay to do meet and greets, and people that would try to kill me if they, it was like, I'd be getting like literal death threats regularly, and like, so it was
It's unbelievable. So with the death threats, it's like, what do you do with that? You just hand it to the cops in the camper van in your driveway, and or do you just sort of laugh it off? Or I mean, most of them are probably loonies, but it's not something that you can't fucking make jokes like that.
Well,
it is a joke.
They track all that,
right?
And like, if someone threatened anyone in our family, it would get sorted very, very quick. Like they do take that stuff seriously, and that now there's laws in place that you can go to prison, for that. So they would pretty quickly, pardon me, like work out who said it, where it's coming from, and you know, as you said, sometimes it would just be a drunk kid that said it, you know, and they'd very quickly apologize and kind of take it down. But then, yeah, there were some people where it wasn't a joke, and obviously that got dealt with in different ways. But yeah, I mean, every threat would get assessed like differently. But yeah, so I don't know. I guess back to your question, like on dealing with it, I think it was weird. I didn't realize I've kind of gone on like a mental health journey in the last like few years, which I didn't realize how messed up it all made me. Like,
man, it's a lot to unpack. It's crazy.
Like, I was always like a very happy, chill kid. Like, you know, if you met me when I was 18 and I was getting abused all the time online, and that was when I had like heaps of hate, and because now I feel like I don't get as much hate. You know, I'm kind of running a business and I'm building people houses, and I feel like I'm trying to do good things now. So I'm getting like less abused constantly. Whereas back then when I was like a bit of a dropkick DJ, like you could see why everyone thought I was a tool. Like, and I look back.
No. Actually, what you can't think someone's a tool just because they're wearing a bandana and no shirt.
Yeah, but I can see like.
But I've got a post here. So this was made on your 26th birthday. How old are you now?
27.
I realised for the last few years of my life I'd portrayed this party boy dropkick version of myself that was actually not an accurate representation of the person I really am. I hated the way I presented myself and learnt the lessons and negative effects social media can play, blah, 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 blah. I mean, is that being a bit hard on yourself? I feel like you were just growing up being normal. I mean, you know, you had it, you still have a good rig. You had a good rig. You had some photos with your top off. Like most, I think, like normal teenage boys that are just like developing that body and work out. They want to show it off.
I think that post is quite complicated. So I took about 18 months off social media. Like I just didn't post. And I feel like I kind of sat there and I ummed whether I'd ever get back.
By the way, what was the catalyst for taking that break? Was there a rock bottom or something? Or
if I'm being honest, I had quite a big mental breakdown. And that's what I was trying to say before is I didn't realize the toll it had on me, because as we were saying at the start of the podcast, I would sit there and go, oh, like I've got rich parents and I went to a private school and I shouldn't feel sad. Like
you've got so much to be grateful for. Yeah.
And I'd be like, I guess I was always quite self-aware. So I'd sit there and go, well, why would I feel like this when, you know, I did like community service at school, like there was a big thing at King's, you know, and I saw people like kind of living on the other side, I guess. I don't know how to say that better, and I was very aware. I was like, shit, that, you know, how I can't moan about anything I'm going through. So I just got to a point where my way of dealing with it, because it was so overwhelming, was I would just ignore it. And I got literally so good that I didn't care. And I like literally didn't care.
Just numbed out to it.
So numb. But I was numb with all my emotions. Like when I was dating girls, like, you know, I'd struggle to feel love. Like I wouldn't accept love from people. But I was nice. I'm not saying I was like an asshole to everyone, but I just had no emotion. Like I could break up with someone and I'd be like, whatever. And I'd want to feel hurt. And then I'd go through these extremes where I'd feel really upset for a little bit. But I just had this like crazy way of just switching it off. And it was bizarre. And I didn't really notice until I got older that it was kind of a problem. And anyway, I went traveling and it was really weird. I'd always been so go. So I got diagnosed with ADD a couple of years ago and OCD, which I never knew I had.
Did you? How do they diagnose? I'm pretty sure I've got that as well.
Yeah, I mean...
Are you on like Ritalin or Concerta or...
Nah, I take stuff for my OCD.
Right.
Like an SSRI. But, yeah, like because I've always been super hypo. And they've worked out with ADD that it's not like a disorder anymore. It's more like a brain type. So people that are just very high energy and always go, that's kind of, it's more like a spectrum as opposed to like you have a condition, because you can't like fix it. You know, it's just, you know, if you're someone that's super high energy, maybe you are on that spectrum. But obviously it is a spectrum. So there's people where it affects them so much that they can't concentrate so I don't have it to like extreme levels or anything like that. But anyway, one thing I didn't understand was I've always kept myself so busy. Like literally the day I finished uni, I went from my exam to full-time work. And when I was at uni, I was working while at uni. And I, like, if you were like, oh, come over and let's sit on the couch and just sit here, I would, like, have a mental breakdown. Like, I hate that. I have to be, like...
Just like an active relaxer.
Oh, like, but to like an unhealthy extreme.
Right.
You know, like this morning, got up, went to the gym at 7, like had meetings 8 till 10, then went to physio, then came here. Like I'll be busy till the moment I go to sleep. And I just have to be like that. I just cram so much stuff in 24/7. I'm always like, go, 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 go. And so my way of dealing with everything was I was so busy that I just ignored it. And so what happened was I went on this OE. You know, my whole life, my parents have been like, you have to achieve, you have to do this, like, you have to study, you have to get good grades, you have to make money. Like, they were so strict on me, and like, because they wanted me to do well, but they pushed me. And then I went from that, you know, working like investment banking, crazy hours, so much pressure, you know, and then all the pressure of growing up with dad, like the social media, and then I'm sitting on the beach in the Bahamas, literally on my own in the middle of nowhere with no service. No one knows me, like just literally nothing, and my parents being like, oh yeah, have fun. And I remember I was sitting on this beach, I just started crying, and I was like, this is the weirdest thing ever. And I was like, I'm in the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life, and I'm miserable. And I like called my mum, and I was like, I literally think I'm depressed. I was like, I don't know what it is. But it was so confusing for me, because I always thought depression was like you sat in your bed and it was dark and you couldn't get out and you wanted to kill yourself, and that was my idea of depression. But I wasn't feeling like that. Like I still wanted to do lots, but I just wasn't happy ever.
Nothing was bringing you the joy that it should have.
No, I just felt numb about everything.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't like unhappy or miserable, but I wasn't happy either. And I think what I've now learned since like going to counselling and stuff like that is that like with that kind of brain, any big change or being not doing anything for too long can really unsettle you. And so my whole life I've just been like, you know, I was always that kid that played like 3 sports and went to school and had friends and did this and that, and just so go. Like I'd have a friend round and they'd leave and I'd be like, oh, let's call another friend, or let's go annoy my mother, you know, like always wanting to like do stuff. And so, you know, then I was like, I want to go travel by myself, and I don't know, it was just weird. And so I really remember I sat on that beach. I had my phone and I was like, I need to do something about this, because I was like, this isn't like good. So I called my parents, had like a big chat, and you know, they were kind of like, oh, maybe you should come home. And I was like, nah, I think I want to like ride this out. And I just started writing this thing on my notes, and it was literally like, I'd never kind of worked out what I wanted, because my whole life I'd been in the spotlight and doing all these different things. And I think I sat there and I realized like I was only doing investment banking because Dad did it. And he told me about it, and it was cool, and he'd been successful, and like I was good at that stuff. Like I'm good with numbers, and you know, I handle pressure really well. And I kind of went into it though because like he did it in a way. I wasn't like literally like I want to do it because Dad did it, but you know, it was just something I'd always been like, I'm going to be.
Yeah, I suppose it's quite common for people to follow in their parents' footsteps.
Yeah, but I just found like I was in there and everyone's like, oh, your dad was the best trader and he was this, and you know, so then, you know, I was like, oh, what does everyone else think is kind of cool? And I was always really into music, and you know, DJing was popular, and I was like, oh, let's try this. You know, I kind of felt like I had no identity because I was always John Key's son, and I was like on this massive quest to try to be Max Key.
Yeah, and sorry, about the first 25 minutes of this podcast has been asking questions about your old man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all good. But that was what I found so tough, and that's why I loved the DJing, was because for the first time I became Max Key. And everyone thought I was so into the publicity and this and that, but it's actually not the psychology of why I loved it. To me, it was like, I was me. I wasn't, oh, this is John Key's son. It wasn't like, oh, you know, I finally had like, I was my own name and I had my own thing, and people knew me for that.
And I looked the original stuff you did. I looked that up on Spotify yesterday. Your most successful song's got over 1 million listens.
Yeah.
No mean feat.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was the thing. Like, it all like did all good. You know, I didn't, you know, a few of those kind of got to like number 1 on Spotify for a little bit. And, you know, I'm not sitting here saying I'm like Calvin Harris or anything.
David Guetta.
Yeah. But I mean,
No. By New Zealand standards.
Yeah, like I always put 100% into everything I do. So I felt like the quality, you know, of everything I did was solid. But I think, yeah, when I was like sitting in the Bahamas, I started basically trying to work out. I just wrote this list, and I was actually like, what do I as Max Key actually want out of life? Like, what do I want to achieve? And what are some things that I want to do? And what makes me happy? And it was so weird. And then from that moment, I was like, I need to get off social media because I need to stop showing other people what I think they want to see. And I was just like, I'm just going to get off. I just got to a point where I was like, I don't care if you like my stuff. I don't care if you think I'm having fun, because I'm going to go have fun. And I was like, I don't care. And that's why I stopped vlogging and doing all this stuff, because I was like, all the fun I was having, I was never filming. And all the stuff I was filming, I was forcing, and it wasn't actually the stuff that was really fun. And people would go, wow, that was amazing. And I was like, nah, the actual amazing thing was when I met this person, or I did this, or if I didn't film it because I was having so much fun, I didn't do it. And so I just got to a point where I was like, I think with the OCD, I get so obsessed with things. So I just became obsessed with like wanting to be better.
I think that's an ADD thing as well, like hyperfixating.
I get so hyperfixated.
Yeah.
And so I created this rule for myself where I was like, every time I was going to use social media, I read a book, like an ebook. And I ended up reading like 53 books while I was traveling.
Wow.
And then I got like obsessed with reading. And so, I'd read every night. And
that's like the worst OE ever.
I know.
Your parents are probably like, oh no, Max is probably out doing coke tonight. No, he's in his hostel on his Kindle.
Nah, so I mean, don't get me wrong. I still like went out and like I still had heaps of fun while I was traveling. But say like I was on a train and I would normally just sit there scrolling Instagram for 2 hours. I'd just like read.
Oh, the zombie scroll. Yeah, it's a trap, isn't it?
Well, I just realized how much time I was wasting. And like, I'm not sitting here saying I was reading like 5 hours a day and completely like, but it was just like when I'd be sitting at an airport or on a plane or, I'd do a Kentucky and it'd be a 7-hour bus ride. I might read for an hour. And I couldn't believe how much stuff and so then it just created this thing where I was like, I just became obsessed with like learning about myself. And so I always tried breaking down to 3 different types. So I'd always read like a psychology book to try like understand
what makes you tick.
Yeah. And then I'd always read like a business book on like a mentor I liked. So like maybe Elon Musk's book or like Phil Knight's book and then I always, Shoe Dog.
Great book.
Such a good book. And then my final thing would always be just something I enjoyed. Just so it would be something more like fun to break it up. Because some of the psychology books can get a bit...
It doesn't sound like fun.
Nah. But to me, I just got so like fixated on spending all my time learning and just growing and trying to be better.
Yeah, well, there's a great book called, you've probably even read this one or read bits of it, Atomic Habits.
Oh, I read that,
And it talks about like whether you do like little good things or little bad things, it's going to take you either on an upward trajectory or a downward trajectory.
Well, and that's what I was meaning about, like, say, with the reading. It might only be 10, 15 minutes a day. But, I was traveling for 18 months and I had no job. So I had, an hour, 2 hours a day where I wasn't doing much. And so that's where I started doing all this. And that's why I read so much. It wasn't actually like I was doing anything freakish or weird. I just was using my time kind of wisely.
Yeah. And when did so you're on the beach in the Bahamas, you call your parents, you say, this fucking sucks. If you can't be happy swimming with the pigs, when are you ever so I'm guessing that was sort of like rock bottom, or that was the moment of realization where you thought, I got to do something about this. So like when did you start therapy, and how did that journey look like for you?
So that only happened...
Like when you were back in NZ?
Yeah, so I was only 3 months into my OE when the Bahamas thing happened. I was maybe only like 2.5.
Right.
But it all kind of makes sense in hindsight because that was exactly enough time where I had kind of switched off. I wasn't stressed. I wasn't busy.
You were forced to slow down.
I was forced to slow down, actually. Like, it was, and that's kind of like, it was almost like this big water balloon and then it just went boom. Whereas my whole life, as I said, like I was so busy that I could just... it's like imagine if you kind of had a breakup and everyone's like, oh, just go be busy. It's kind of like that. Like, I just distracted myself my whole life. But that's the thing with emotion is that it has to come out in some way. You can't just, because I was like, oh, I'm so amazing with stress because I would never get stressed. And if I got stressed, I'd be really calm. But then I found out I was stressed 24/7. So when I was stressed, it wasn't doing anything to me because I was already...
You're always on hyper alert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because people sit there and go, oh, that means you're pulling your hair out every 2 seconds. And it's not like that. It's just that I was always busy, like...
But that adrenaline state, it's not a good state to be in for that
not
sort of duration.
Nah, it's terrible for you. And so, so I guess I came home and I'd always known there was something a little bit weird with me. Like if you ask anyone that knows me, like if you ask anyone that actually knows me, not claim they do, how would you describe Max Key? I guarantee they'd all say intense. That's kind of like what most people, like, oh, he's intense. Like, in a good or a bad way, that's just how, I'm just full on. like I talk heaps. I'm always like thinking of stuff like, and so I always knew there was something like a bit weird. Not the weird's the wrong word. There was always something. I always felt a little bit different, but not different in a way where, because I have really good social skills. Like I wouldn't be scared in front of girls, and I wasn't like, again, my definition of all these things, because I always thought of OCD was you just had to be really tidy, but that's not what OCD I have.
No, and how does OCD look like for you?
I have quite bad intrusive thought OCD, and I think, so I'm a chronic overthinker.
Right.
So it's really good in aspects of my life. That's why I'm always in really good shape, and I feel like I run my business well, and I've had success like studying, or because I'm always thinking so much and overthinking what could go wrong, that it makes me fixate on that stuff. But then, say when I have a girlfriend or I have good things in my life, I overthink all the bad things that could happen, and I almost like self-destruct. And that's kind of the negative side of it. And that's when I got older, I realized. Whereas when you're younger, like, I just played sport, I went to school, like, maybe I'd fixate on having a bad game, or,
Yeah.
Whereas when you get older, you start actually realizing, like, I became like a massive hypochondriac. Like, I'd get a heart palpitation and be like, oh, am I having a heart attack? And I'd like Google symptoms of that.
Well, was it like an anxiety attack?
No, like, I'd just feel anything in my body. Like,
Right.
I'd get like a little pain in my head for 2 seconds, and I'd be like I feel like stupid saying this, but I got to a point I'd be like, I've got like a brain tumor. And I would freak out.
Or you get like Googling symptoms?
I'd Google
Googling's
all the symptoms.
Dr. Google's a terrible idea.
And then I'd be like, maybe I should talk to my doctor. But with OCD, you just loop.
Yeah.
And I'd sit there and be like, what if the doctor doesn't pick up on it? And that's the problem with OCD, is there's no answer. You just can keep asking the same question over and over and over. And so I did all this my whole life. Like, I always asked for reassurance. I'd always be... So, like, as a kid, I was... And to bring back to your question, I've always been anti-smoking. Like, I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, never will. And as a kid, would walk past someone that would smoke. I'd go, like, Mum, Dad, why is that guy smoking? They'd be like, because he's addicted. I'd be like, but why is he addicted? And then they'd be like, oh, because he wants to be. And I'd be like, well, why? It kills you. And so then they'd sort that out. And then we'd go 100 metres, we'd walk past another smoker. Be like, Mum, Dad, why is it?
And we told you.
So there was heaps of stuff like that as a kid where they didn't understand that was like OCD. And I obviously had no idea.
Because how old were you at the time? Because I feel like it's common for kids to ask a million questions of their parents.
And so that was the thing. So it was when I was young. But I would ask, like, everywhere I go, like jiu-jitsu, school, everyone's like, he asks way too many questions. Because I just get so fixated on, like, I have to learn. But I do, like, weird things. So, like, say we're in, like, the helicopter once, and Dad was talking to, like, another guy because he's doing his PPL. And they were talking about the engine.
What's PPL?
Private pilot.
Right,
pilot
gotcha.
license.
Yep.
And they were talking about, like, the engineering of, the motor. And I sat there and had no value to add to the conversation. I felt like an idiot. And I literally went home and for like 5 hours just studied like helicopter engineering just in case, that's
Yeah. Wow.
And so as a kid, like, my parents are like, oh, he's just inquisitive and he just asks a lot. And so no one really...
Oh, so you just never sort of grew out of it like toddlers do eventually.
But no one thought... Because it wasn't like a problem. As I said, it's a spectrum. So I wasn't like incapable of focusing. I wasn't like... I was just intense, and everyone just thought I was full on. But then my dad's really intense, so everyone's like, oh, he's just like his dad. And so it wasn't until I got older and I started understanding it more that there was so many things I was doing that were like OCD, which I just had no idea about. And I think... Oh, actually, sorry, there's one thing that happened while I was traveling. So I caught the bubonic plague when I was in Bosnia.
Oh my God, what year were you travelling? 1884?
I know. So I was the first... I think I was the first person in New Zealand since 1905 to get it. And I ate this like...
Jeepers.
Yeah, it's called Yersinia. It's like Yersinia entera or something.
That seems like the worst thing for a hypochondriac to catch.
Well, that's what caused the hypochondria. So, and that's what... So apparently when you have like something like lurking or that's like dormant, if you have like a really triggering event that can like offset or that can create the problem. So I was never as OCD as I like am now, and I was never a hypochondriac. I was a little bit, but never to any extreme. But I caught that and like, I wouldn't say I nearly died, but I lost like 15, 20 kilos. I was, fainting. Wow. Like, it was all like truly, truly horrific. Like, I couldn't eat food for like...
Is there nothing, there's no vaccine, nothing they can...
No, only like a couple hundred people a year catch it. Like, it's really rare. And like, so that was the problem. I was going to I ended up in hospital like 7 times while I was traveling. And every time I'd go, there'd be a list of like 200 things you could have. It'd be like number 200 because no one catches it. And so they were always like, oh, you're dehydrated or you're this or you're that. And so no one could like fix me. And so that's what caused the hypochondria, because I was so nervous because, you know, you can tell in your body when something's going wrong. And, you know, it's got like a decently high death rate. And I was like a really, really fit 24-year-old in quarter, and it absolutely hit me for 6. So if you were 70 or 80 in quarter, you can see how it just destroyed you. Like for 18 months, my gut was just ruined. Like couldn't eat. I was throwing stuff up. Like almost got IBS. Like I was constantly getting like gastroscopies. Like,
how is this even still a thing? Like they came up with a vaccine for COVID in a couple of years.
yeah, well, it's basically, it's not the exact same as the bubonic plague where you get bitten by like a mosquito, but if you drink contaminated water that has, I think, copper in it,
Right.
and then I ate pork that had eaten or drank the water, and so there's like 2 weird, it's either contaminated water or really bad pig, like pork that's eaten it. It was in, like, we're in Sarajevo and kind of like a stayover thing with we're at like a local family's house, and, you know, so I'd say it's probably from something like that. But, I mean, you take that risk when you travel, you know, it's, but I think that's what, really unsettled me, was I didn't know what was going wrong. And I was going to all these specialists and they kept telling me, well, there's nothing wrong with you. But I'm sitting there like,
there's definitely something wrong.
I literally felt like I was dying. Like,
especially if you're as in tune with your own body as what you were, you know. Then
I knew something really bad, and I'm calling my parents. I'm like, "We'll go to the doctor." And I go to the doctor, and they'd be like, "There's nothing wrong with you. Drink some water." And so then I finally got to the point where, because I was having all these arguments with my parents, they were like, "We'll come home and get everything tested." So I literally did every test under the sun, and then that's when they discovered, they're like, holy, like, you've had this thing called Yersinia. And even my doctor like had to Google it, because apparently it's the first thing you learn on day 1 of like medical school. They're like, you're never going to need this.
They start at number 200 and work their way through.
And work through. And so, but it was one of those things where once you've got it, they can't do anything. You just have to kind of go through it. And so the remnants of it all was I became a hypochondriac, because I sat there and went, oh, like, what if I died? And so I started freaking out about death and, you know, my health, and I just kind of became...
Is that those fears of death with this thing, were they rational or is that irrational?
Well, it's probably the OCD, you know,
Okay,
it's probably just the uncertainty of it all.
Yeah.
And it made me realise just how fragile everything is. And, you know, because I think in New Zealand we do live quite sheltered lives. You know, you don't sit there and, you know, you don't really think about...
The fucking plague. No, you don't.
Yeah, no.
No.
So...
But I went to see a therapist for a while. I'm not in therapy at the moment, but it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but one of the best things as well. And while I was there, I was like, why the fuck did I take so long to embark on this journey? Because it's like a personal trainer for your fucking head.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
this therapist said to me one day, when you're having like ridiculous or irrational thoughts, or you're in a critical, your inner voice is going crazy, and you realise you're doing it, pull yourself up and just ask yourself, is this helping? And it never is. But were you able to do that or no?
So that's the whole kind of like therapy process. Was now I get to a point where I go, is this fact or opinion? And if it's an opinion, I just ignore it. And
is this with your own thoughts or with things that you... Yeah.
So I'm sitting there and I'm going, am I... Because it started with hypochondria, but then it would, you know, it evolved into like heaps of different... Like anything with uncertainty, I'd start... Yeah, because nothing... But what you realise is nothing in life's uncertain. Like I could be like, see you next week, but... You might get hit by a bus, or I might fall off a cliff, or, you know, the world might explode. You know, it might be 99% certain, but there's nothing that's actually certain. Whereas with OCD, you get certainty about everything. And so you don't realize how many things in life are actually uncertain. And so I think you just start like everyone fixates on different things. So, you know, some people, it might be light switches, and they go, oh, if I don't turn that off, the house is going to blow up and then I might kill my kid, or... You know, you just start having all these crazy thoughts. Yeah,
and it seems like crystal clear in your mind that is going to be the outcome, as irrational as it is.
Because it's triggering your, like, amygdala, which is your, like, fight or flight. And so, in time, you learn... You know, and obviously, I go through different patches. You know, if I'm really stressed or something's really bothering me, I find it harder to manage. But, you know, for quite a couple of years now, I've been pretty in tune with it all.
Yeah, so that's good. And you're in a good place now? What's your like inner voice, inner critic like now? Pretty good?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really tough on myself. Like, I have really high expectations of myself. And, I am a bit of a perfectionist, I think. So I struggle to do things in halves. I'm either really, really, really focused on something or I'm not.
Is that a bad? That's not a bad thing. Is that a bad thing?
Well, this is
Or
what...
is it just annoying? I had Lisa Carrington sitting in the same chair last week, New Zealand's greatest ever Olympian, and she was the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
like
she's
whatever she does, she wants to do well. Like there's the kayaking, obviously, but even if she's like cooking a pizza for her and her husband at home, like she wants to make it really fucking good.
Well, what my counselor said was that almost every highly successful business or sportsman will have some form of thing, because to be that good at something, you have to be obsessed.
But I feel like it's probably healthy or good to have some things that you're just shit at, and you're happy to be shit at.
Well, that's why I started jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but then you got obsessed with that.
And I got obsessed with it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, let's get into that now. So you it's the most Joe Rogan thing ever. So Rogan goes on and on about jiu-jitsu in his podcast, froths about it.
Froths it.
So was this a New Year's resolution or?
Kind of. I was dating a girl last year and we broke up, and over summer I was kind of up north with my parents and just kind of cruising really. And I was listening to quite a few of his podcasts, and it wasn't necessarily that he was just going on about jiu-jitsu and was like, you should do it, because to be blunt, when you'd talk about it, I actually used to skip those bits because I just didn't, I'm just not, and I was never that kid that wrestled with his mates growing up, and I'm not a confrontational dude, and it's not stuff that it's not really something I'm that into. My dad was never like that with me. I never had brothers. I just kind of don't. I always loved ball sports and that kind of thing. But anyway, so what actually got me hooked on it was, have you heard of Jocko Willink?
No.
You should listen to him. He's awesome. So he's a Navy SEAL and he does these really cool motivational talks. And he's been on Joe Rogan a lot. They're really good friends. And he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He was talking about goal setting. And so he talks about, say that I come to you or I set myself a goal and I go, I want to do 50 pull-ups by the end of the year. And say that I get to 46 by the end of the year. And that I get to the point where to do those final 4, I'd have to lose 10 kilos, stop training and stop working because I have to do all this other stuff just to achieve this tiny incremental goal. He's kind of saying that as much as you want to always set out to achieve what you want to do, there's also a point where is that tiny gain that you're getting worth abandoning everything else in your life. And so he talks about you constantly need to revise your goals, but you need to be at least, in your head thinking, because say with your marathon running, you could easily be I got to 30K and it was tough, so, that's close enough. He's not saying do that, but it was, say that if you wanted to be half an hour quicker in your marathons, you had to stop podcasting, stop your job, have no friends and never eat anything nice.
Yeah, it's opportunity cost or lost, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's just weighing it up. It's not necessarily saying quit all your goals before you achieve stuff, because obviously you still need to achieve, but is that worth it? And so, and that's kind of part of what I thought was social media, is this adding? But anyway, so what Joe then replied to that is he goes, that's really true. And he's the best way to constantly be growing and developing your brain, because it's kind of like a muscle, is to constantly be really crap at something, because that feeling of being terrible, it forces you to evolve. And that's what got me into it. I was and that's what he was saying is amazing with jiu-jitsu, was he's I've been doing it for 20 years or however long he's been doing it. I'm a black belt, but every day I learn something new, and every day I feel vulnerable, and every day there's someone choking me out and making me feel uncomfortable. And that's kind of what got me hooked, was it was what I hate is I feel I get so obsessed with things that I suck the life out of them, and then I feel I've cracked it.
Yeah.
With baseball, I got to a point where I was in the New Zealand team. I was training really hard. I wanted to go to America, but I was never going to be the next Derek Jeter. But I had already done pretty well, in New Zealand. Or, I'd get into golf and I'd got to scratch, and I could do...
You're not going to be Tiger or Ryan Fox.
No, that's the thing. And I was playing with guys like Ryan. I was in that circle, but I wasn't quite there. And so I kind of did that with everything in life, where I was what's the saying where you're a master at everything, but a
jack of all trades, master of none.
Master of none, yeah. I was kind of like that. I was kind of all round pretty good at a lot of things, but I wasn't epic at anything. And I think it was because I would get to that point where it was like I either had to, say with golf, I got to a point where I had to stop business and work if I wanted to compete with those guys that did it full time. So then I get to a point where I'm like, something would switch in my brain. I go, I'm not really that into that now. So I still play every now and then and can still do well, but I lose that like that intense passion just to be like insanely good at it, which is what will motivate me. And so do you
think if you found something that you enjoyed and you stuck with it and you kept at it, you'd eventually like break through and get to that next level?
Well, that's where I'm with my business.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's like why I love it so much. And to me, it's something like I see myself doing a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. Geez, I want to get to the business, but first of all, the jiu-jitsu thing. So you started in like January this year?
About February 5th.
February. Yeah. And then before long, you're going like twice a day?
Yeah, so I started...
Geez, you are all or nothing, aren't you?
So, yeah. My parents always make like a joke. Like, I got back into swimming. I used to swim quite a lot. And I kind of started going like twice a week. And then I started going like 6 times a week.
Oh, my God.
The dad was literally like, I had a bet with mum how long it would take before. Like, because I was like, I'm going to go to the Masters Games. And like, then COVID happened, so I ended up stopping that. But
it's like is it an addictive personality?
So I'm really weird. Like, I am super addictive, but then, like, you know, I never drank. Like,
yeah. Good addictions.
Yeah. Well, good and bad. Like, I think when I get so focused that sometimes I don't have fun at things. Like, say with golf, I got to a point where, you know, I could, like, break par or, you know, play really well, but I'd be, like, kicking myself that I shot 1 over. Whereas 5 years earlier, if I played with Dad socially and I shot 90, I'd have the best day ever.
Yeah.
You know, so now I'm trying to learn how to like I go out with my friends on Fridays now and I play and I don't care what I shoot and I'm not trying to be, you know,
intense about it or
just try literally have fun with it. And so that's been something I really struggle with. But like
you're aware it's an issue and you're working on it.
But so yeah, with the jiu-jitsu I was going probably 2, 3. I think when you start, they like recommend that you start like twice a week for a couple of weeks because you use all these muscles like you don't even know existed.
So what is it like wrestling on a mat? Is it kind of wrestling on a mat? How would you say, for someone that's listening to this that's got no idea what jiu-jitsu is there a way you could sum it up in a sentence or two?
It's like a ground-based grappling system. So in competition, you start on your feet. So it's kind of like a combination of judo takedowns with like wrestling sort of. It is like wrestling, but there's submissions. So, you know, you're like arm barring people, knee locks, choking people. But what's awesome about it is it's designed so that I could be way smaller than you, but I use your body weight against you. So it's actually entirely practical. You know, every night I roll with guys that, you know, might be 30 kilos heavier than me and I can have a like good spar with them. And, you know, it's like one of very, very few combat sports where I can go full to every night. Whereas with like boxing, like you can't get punched in the face.
Yeah, the bigger man's always going to win.
Yeah, and like you can't get smacked in the head every night. You know, you'd end up brain dead.
Yeah.
Whereas like with this sport, you can go because you tap. So anytime, obviously like injuries happen and mistakes happen, but you can train really, really hard every night, which that's what I think is really cool about it. And I think what's also awesome is you're fighting a real person every night. Whereas, you know, with like karate or some of these other things, a lot of it's more learning like the technique behind it, but I'm not taking anything away from those sports.
No, you've just found your thing, your niche.
Yeah, I just think for me it's like there's a lot of genuine self-defense principles you learn. And I think a lot of fights, especially in New Zealand, end up on the ground. You know, and if someone was to take me to the ground 2 years ago, I'd have no idea. And that happened to me in Croatia. I got jumped by kind of like 4 or 5 guys. And I just got
Labour supporters.
But yeah, I just got like the shit beaten out of me. And
did you actually?
Yeah.
Well, like when they stole your money, shoes, what did they?
They tried to, yeah.
Right.
And that was another thing that kind of triggered my anxiety a
But
little
a completely random thing. They weren't New Zealanders or anything.
No, completely random. No idea who I was. And
you hear about that stuff happening overseas. It's like we were talking before. You have to take, when you travel, you have to take calculated risks, don't you?
Well, that's the thing.
Like
and
your
like,
homestay thing where you ate the pork.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
Can't.
Yeah, I mean, if you sat there and went, I'm never going to try anything or do anything different because I don't want,
the risk. It's not a life.
Nah, and that's the thing. Like, I think the funnest things in life are where, there is a bit of danger, or not danger, but like you have to like try new things, and that's the whole. In my eyes, that's why you travel. I want new experiences, and
So is the jiu-jitsu going to be 'Cause after having this conversation with you, I can see the way you light up when you talk about jiu-jitsu, but with everything else that's been said, part of me is worried you're going to get to a year and like just go, oh, I'm never going to be the best in the world at it. I'm done.
Well,
Do you think you've found your peace with it, where you can just keep where it'll be part of your life forever, or?
Well, that's where I feel. I mean, like I went to World Champs, I didn't win. I mean, that was tough because I have only been doing it a short amount of time, and like the guy I lost to was like 5 years in. And
yeah, to go to the World Champs after doing it 7-8 months, whatever it was. Yeah, that sounds remarkable.
No, I was pretty stoked, and I did another tournament in Texas that I came second at, and that was like almost as big as Worlds, and yeah, so like I feel like I've progressed like really fast I mean, it's such a humbling sport. Like I get the crap beaten out of me every night by everyone, you know, and the moment you feel like you're getting a time bit better, you just get smoked again. But to me, I love the mental side of it. I know that sounds like really corny, but
no,
like it's bizarre. Say you have some 120 kilo just monster on top of you.
Most nights,
yeah,
no.
Like choking the shit out of you. You learn how to, like last night, I was like in this triangle, which is where people wrap their legs around your neck and they like squeeze it down. It's awful. Like all the blood goes to your head and you think you're going to die. Like, but you learn to just sit there and breathe. And I sat there and
come up with sit there, pause, and come up with a strategy of how to get out of it.
Yeah, because it's literally like chess, and that is why I love it so much. So, say I go to fake like a sweep on you, where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna scissor sweep you left. I might set that up so then you put all your weight on your right leg, and then I go do something completely different, and I baited you into defending that, so I attack you with something different. It's kind of like that. Like I might make you look left, so I go right. It's literally like a step in rugby. But with jiu-jitsu, there might be 8 attacks. And so the black belts might be faking like 7 things, whereas I might only know 3. And that's why the high belts smoke you so much.
What colour belt are you now?
I'm still white, but I'm pretty close to my blue.
Right.
Which takes normally about 2-3 years.
So it's white, the first one?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're in like a white belt division at the World Champs?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's where like it's interesting at Worlds, because you get guys that, like the guy I lost to got promoted to blue on the podium. So you know he's like a blue belt that, you know, he'd been a white belt for 5 years, whereas you can be a purple belt. You can nearly be black after 5 years.
Right. So there's no way of sort of accelerating the process. You have to do your time on each colour.
It's time, yeah.
Fuck, that must drive you crazy.
Well, the white and blue is skill, but it usually takes about 2-3 years. But since I was training so much, hopefully do it in about a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so say when I get to blue, it's 2.5 years. Like you have to. It's like
You just have to be patient.
Yeah.
Are you not very good at being patient?
Terrible.
Yeah. I'm the same.
Yeah, like I'm literally like, let's do it tomorrow. Let's do it right now.
Mm.
Like, but that's why I think I love it so much. Is like, you know, it's like what I was saying, how you learn how to breathe. Like, in a weird way, you sit there and say something really stressful happens at work, or like with someone you're dating, or I don't know what it is. It's just subconsciously you sit there and go, well, this isn't as bad as getting choked by Bill, or you know, like, or like
I'm not on the mat with that dude's thighs around my neck.
Yeah, so it's like, it's so weird. You just go, oh, like, and like, say like last night, I remember like when that guy was doing that, it was awful. Like, and I was so close to tapping, and I went, because it's like this weird thing where, say if I'm squeezing your neck, to actually choke you generally, well, not in every position, but some you really have to like, you know, really flex for like a little bit or put heaps of pressure on. So it's like anything. If you try to choke me for 10 seconds, there's a point where like your forearms are going to give way. Mm. So it's like this game where like lots of guys you fight will be expressionless. So you might be like a second away from tapping them, but you go, oh, it's not working. Like I'm not in deep enough, or I don't have the grip right. So you'll let it go, but you might have been like a second away from then tapping. And so that's like the kind of art of it is, you know, when
like having a poker face?
It's a full poker face, yeah. And so the really good guys you roll with, you won't know you're hurting them.
Yeah.
Because they'll just be like...
I mean, yeah, different sport, but at the time we're recording this, Israel Adesanya lost his fight a couple of days ago, and just before that was called off, he was just getting smacked in the face repeatedly. Bang, bang, bang. And he even, I don't know, maybe he was in a different planet, but he was showing no
emotion, yeah.
No emotion at all, not even flinching.
Nah, well, I saw something where he hurt the nerve, I think, in his knee.
Oh, is that so?
On the kick.
Right.
If you rewatch it, because when he did the kick, we were all like, oh, that didn't look... I thought he'd broken his leg. But, like, imagine how much that would have hurt. Mm. Like, just imagine that.
Much,
like,
yeah.
I don't care how much adrenaline, like, he would have been in a world of pain. Like, that was half the reason I think he got cornered, because he was saying he couldn't pivot. And, you know, if you, like, did all the stuff in there, you'd be stuck. But that's the point, is if he sits there and goes, oh, my knee's really sore, then the guy's just going to murder him.
Punish that knee, target that knee repeatedly.
Yeah, and so that's kind of like the art of it, is, you know, showing no emotion. And so you kind of learn, say, like, I guess where I'm going with this is when I was in that position, you know that if you can survive however long that may be, and you just don't give up, you know that they'll eventually give up, because there's only so long you... Like, imagine if I said squeeze your bicep as hard as you can. There's a point where you're going to stop because it just hurts. And you're going to go, oh, well, it's not working. And so that's what I love about it, is it teaches me that patience. And you sit there, and that camp I did was the most awful thing I've ever done in my life. Like, by a mile. Like,
and what was it? How long was the camp?
It was 4.5 months.
Right.
And I was training 10 till 12, 6 till 9 every night.
Oh my God, that's
every day,
awful. That's your life revolving around this
Literally, well, because the property market was a bit dead, and we were kind of in that transition where I was moving MTK into Stonewood Quay. And so it was quite a quiet, like, period for me. I was still busy, but, you know, but that was the thing, I was working like 6 till 10, 1 till 5, and then I was training 6 till... I had no life. I was literally training, sleeping, eating, working. That's all I did. Like, no drinking, no partying, no friends. Like,
did you enjoy it, though, or did you hate every minute of it?
I loved it, in a, like, kind of sick way, yeah. It was weird. It was awful, but it was awesome. And it was... I had this weird thing when I was a kid. I always wanted to be like a fighter jet pilot or in the SAS, but I'm like ruthlessly colorblind, and so couldn't really... Probably still could have done the SAS, but I guess, I don't know, it's something I regret not trying to do. But I think because we met a lot of the guys, like, through Dad, and I don't know, I didn't get talked out of it, but they were kind of like, it's brutal, you know, like...
Yeah, well, like SAS.
Yeah.
Who are you talking about, like Willie Apiata?
I didn't meet him, but...
No. Yeah, I mean, the training is next. I'm guessing SAS is similar to Navy SEALs. I've watched some docos about that.
I think it's worse almost, yeah.
Really?
New Zealand SAS is like the most respected.
Yeah, fuck that. Why would you want that?
Well, and I think that was the thing, whereas I sat there and went like, oh, it looks awesome and all that. But there's a side of it, you know, like...
It's so
the psychology. Yeah, and like, it really affects me. I have, you know, crazy amounts of respect for those guys and what, you know, they do for the country and just what they put themselves through. And I think when you're, again, young, you don't realize that, you know, it's impossible to have it's really hard to have a family and the psychological effects. And so I didn't really think about that, whereas I guess I got to be exposed to a bit of that, so it made me realize maybe it's not as cool as the good bit seems.
Yeah.
I'd always had this weird thing where I like really, the idea of like doing the Navy SEAL camp or something like really intense like that kind of really excited me. I don't know why. And so when I kind of got, because I was doing like pretty well at jiu-jitsu like at the start, like I'm quite athletic, so I was like quite coordinated, so I was picking it up quite quick, and I kind of said to Sensei, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of keen to compete, and he's like, oh yeah, well I was going to like invite you to Worlds with us this year. He's like, I think you could do really well, but you got to commit to this camp and it's going to be the most awful thing you do. And so I was kind of like, yeah, bring it on. Like, you know, as I said, I was never like a wrestler or a fighter, and so there was like just some weird thing in my brain that was like, it'd be kind of cool to become like a bit of a ninja and, you know, be a bit tougher and know how to defend myself, and I just wanted to go through something really hard. I don't know why. I just
build more resilience.
Yeah, and so it was awful. Like I broke my finger the first week. I think I broke my rib like 2 months in. I caught COVID a month in. Like I got tennis elbow on my right arm, and then on top of all of that, you're just getting the absolute. Because I was crap then. Like, you know, when I'm still very bad now, but.
Yeah, you're never going to be worse than what you are on that very first day.
Yeah, and I was terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, absolutely no idea. I was still learning all the basics. Like, now I'm at the point where I'm close to my blue belt, and I have, like, I kind of know a little bit about everything, but nothing at the same time. Like, I could show you all the kind of moves. I'd do them badly, but I understand it all. And then from now, it's all, like...
How many hours do you reckon you've done now? Like a few hundred?
Oh, yeah. I did 170 classes.
Right.
Which were 2 hours, so...
Right. So that's 340 there.
And then I went to America for 6 weeks, and I was like living at a school over there, and I was training like the whole day.
Yeah, wow.
And then, you know, there's all the gym work on top of all that. I was still gymming 3 times a week and, you know, it's fitness. Like, but yeah, anyway, so the training was like just brutal, like absolutely brutal. And, you know, there were days like I'd be in the car crying and like I couldn't feel my arm and like my rib was sore.
Who was in the car? Were you driving
just
yourself?
by myself, like going home. I'd be like crawling into bed, like I call my dad or mum and be like, oh, I'm in so much pain. They're like, well, you're a fucking idiot. Why are you doing this? You know, like they had no sympathy for me.
That's amazing. So I couldn't tell you the last time I cried from physical pain, like emotional pain, or even like happy tears. I'll cry, but really, you were just like that broken, like mentally and physically.
Because I'm not a crier. Like,
yeah.
It was just, I mean, I cry like at funerals and
yeah, of course.
You know, but I'm not. Like, as I said, I'm pretty in tune with my emotion. Oh, I'm pretty good at like numbing it out, but. Man, like you do 10 rounds of 6 minutes after 2 hours of training and a gym workout and technical training in the morning. And it's not like when you're bad at golf and you miss a putt and you feel like an idiot. You're getting choked and there's some guy trying to break your arm and you have a broken rib and then you just suck.
Well, you give me a 3-putt any day.
Yeah, and then exactly, I take a 4-putt. And then you stand up and you got sensei being like, you're crap, like you need to work harder, you're this, you're that. And you're just like, because they're just trying to break you because it's all developing that like mental toughness. And there was some days where, you know, you'd just be in the car and everything hurt and it's 10 p.m. and it was winter and you're just like, why am I doing this? Like literally why? Like, and I just got...
What kept you at it then?
I don't know.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, well, like Sensei kind of like got us in front of the whole school and he's like, I give him 3 weeks before he quit. And I like, you're not allowed to talk. Like it's very...
Oh, yeah. Master and apprentice.
Yeah, very. Yeah. And I was like, I'll die before I quit in front of the whole school.
Do they have like a bell, like the Navy SEAL
Nah,
bell?
It's not that bad. But because not that many people do the comps.
Yeah, right.
But it's very like the whole school knows you're doing the comp. And, you know, it's very like the comp squad's like, because my sensei, you know, is like 6-time Oceania champ. And he's very respected. You know, he's a 5th degree black belt.
Do you think, just going back to him saying in front of the class that he gives you 3 weeks or whatever, do you think... You've spent more time with him now. You got more of a relationship. Is part of that psychology? Like he'd treat you differently to different, yeah. Or would he say that to anyone?
He's very like tough love.
Yeah.
And so in a weird way, when he likes you or loves you, he's meaner to you. So I would say I get picked on more at training, and he's harder on me than he is on other people. Like he has high expectations of me. Whereas there's other people that he's way nicer to, but he probably cares a little less. So in a weird way, like my dad was like that. Like he was really tough on me. Like our relationship's gotten better, but he was really like that when I was younger. And so,
what was your dad like with your sister? Was it like easier on her?
Very different relationship. Yeah,
I think that's like that with a lot of dads. They treat their sons differently to daughters.
Yeah, very. Like me and my sister are like bipolar opposites. Like she's like blonde hair, blue eyed, arty, like loves Europe and big cities and hates the warm. I'm like super sporty, like just
you complete it. It's amazing, eh? But I think you find that with any sort of like sibling base, it's like I can't believe we're fucking related. We are so different.
Yeah, but we are like so. Yeah. Because you know how you see some people and like they all 3 of them look the same. They look exactly like half of the parents.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's so sweet. We couldn't be more dissimilar.
Because how old is you're 27. She's older than you. Yeah.
She's nearly 30.
30. What's your relationship like? You see much of each other, or you just have like a family group chat that you message on?
Yeah, we've got a family chat.
You're quite close, or not particularly?
We go through phases. Like growing up, I don't think we were, but I think we were so dissimilar that like we had nothing in common. Like literally nothing. Whereas now, you know, she'll talk to me about jiu-jitsu and, you know, she'll be interested in my business and I'll talk about, you know, the stuff she's into.
I think that happens when you're adults, eh?
Yeah.
The age gap becomes less and less.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we can both talk about like failed relationships and, you know, there's more in common because we've got life in common. You know, like we can talk about travel and things we saw. And whereas when you're a kid, it's like, come play basketball with me. And she's like, no.
You know? Do girl stuff.
Yeah. And she'd be like, come draw. And I'd be like, no. Like,
boring.
Yeah. So we were so different that there was just nothing we could see eye to eye on. Like I loved maths and eco and she loved art and painting. And so I think as a kid, like we were so different. Whereas now, yeah, like there's so much more that we. But she lives in London, so I mean with the time zone, like. But we have a really cool relationship. Like, you know, I might only touch base once a month or every couple months, but you know, in a proper way. Like, you know, we'll be in the family chat and kind of bounce stuff. But
I feel like it's the same with mine. I got a sister that lives like 3 k's away in Point Chev, and I can go for a month without seeing her.
yeah, you don't see them.
But you know that the love is there. This might be a weird question. This might be me sort of projecting or imagining myself in your shoes. Was there a time there, like when your dad was Prime Minister and you were getting all this heat, that you were resentful that she was out of the country and you were here taking the brunt of it? No?
No, I was kind of like...
Was it that an intentional move on her part, by the way? Like, was she like, I want to bounce? She managed to do, like, there were some bits and pieces where media would, like, she'd do some raunchy art or whatever in Paris, and the paper would pick that up. But generally, she was sort of out of it, eh?
Yeah, I don't think she wanted to be involved with it.
Yeah.
To be honest, I was...
Were you jealous of that at all? Like, there must have been times where you were like, man, why didn't I?
Nah, because I kind of felt like I almost felt like, in a weird way, I kind of liked when I copped the heat, because I was like, oh, at least Dad's not getting it. Or, like, at least I felt like I was helping them out.
That's so unhealthy, though, eh?
Yeah.
Such not a healthy way to think.
But
it's terrible.
Yeah, like, I don't know, I kind of...
I mean, it's good. It's nice that you're protective and stuff, but it's,
like I'm super protective over her.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard because she's an older sister. She moved away when I was 15. You know, so I'm not like a protective older brother kind of.
Yeah.
Psycho.
She can look after herself.
Yeah, but like I would never let people like speak ill of her or, you know, anything like I'm really protective over my family, and so that was kind of the thing. Like, a bit of me was like, well, I'm copying the heat anyway, so at least if I'm getting it, like my mum's not, and. You know, I was kind of like, I am like super protective over them, so.
Yeah. So you've developed a real thick skin. How's your mum? Is she okay?
She's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, she's awesome.
She seems quite private. Like you never hear much about.
Nah,
about your mum
she hates all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So, which is cool. I think Dad and I are kind of more like show ponies.
Geez, we're gonna have to wrap this up shortly, but we haven't even talked about your business yet. So you're a property developer now.
Yep.
So it's what's it called?
Stonewood Key.
Stonewood Key. What does that mean?
So I had a business called MTK Capital.
What is that?
Max Timothy Key. Yeah. And so that was kind of just a family business. Well, it was designed to be, you know, it was just Dad and I, and, you know, I was kind of running it all, and Dad was putting some like seed capital in. And originally when we started, it was like, we had no staff, no publicity, no website. We were just kind of like, oh, who's MTK? You know, no one knew who we were. Like the media had no idea. And then we got to a point where I wanted to like scale things up, not out of the media sense, but just wanted to do more stuff. And so kind of like a few stories during COVID and a few chats, and we ended up, long story short was, I thought, pardon me, it'd be a good idea if we got in with a group home builder. And I was like, yeah, we might lose a bit of margin, but I'm a one-man band like in the company, and you know, we can get them to project manage and oversee everything. So that led to discussions with the Chow brothers, because Dad knew them through business and through politics, and you know, so they own Stonewood Homes, which they bought out of receivership a couple of years ago.
The Chow brothers, were they the like the strip club guys?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so
I'm well aware of their previous work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we so originally what happened was we were like, oh, let's do a development together and see how it goes. And then it was like, oh, here's another site, let's do this one together. And so that happened. We ended up buying like quite a few sites together. And then we were all kind of sitting around and we went, what if we like got other people's money and raised money like to do this? And so then we sat there and went, well, they have this really good product with Stonewood, and I know what I'm doing with development, and Dad and I have this really good brand, and they don't have the greatest personal brand, but Stonewood's a really great brand.
Yeah, why don't they have a good personal brand? Is it from the being the underworld strip club sort of
Yeah, and I
scene?
think people like in New Zealand can be a bit, not like racist, but I think they go, oh, they're Chinese, they're probably in the mafia, and
triads or
yeah, you know, like
yeah,
these dodgy strip club guys, but they're actually not. They're actually just really hardworking grassroots businessmen, and that's why I partner with them. You know, I wouldn't put my name on something I didn't. You know, I have massive respect for them, and you know, they brought their family out of massive poverty, and you cannot fault their work ethic. Like those guys, like I thought I was a hard worker. They make me look like an amateur, and so, so we ended up kind of starting the brand, and so then what happened was I started kind of posting my developments, and because I wanted people to know that you know, because I got to this point where I'd like be going out and people were like, oh, do you have a job yet? And I'd be like, literally built like 30 homes. And, you know, like I didn't care about that so much, but I was like, if I'm going to start raising money from the public, and that's kind of to like full circle back to that post you said that I talked about at the start.
Oh, your reintegration to social media, where
Yeah.
you said, I regret some of the things I did on social media.
Yeah, and that's why I posted that. It was more so me being like, you may or may not have thought whatever you want to think about me when I was younger, but here's a line in the sand. And I was younger, I did some things. And yeah, I can get into like what you said, oh, everyone did that stuff, but I didn't really feel the need to do that. I feel like most people can work that out. And so then it was kind of like, that's the line in the sand. I'm new me now. And that's why my social media is way more corporate, you know. I don't post flashy things. Like I don't.
Although there was a happy birthday carousel to your mum the other day, and there was a photo there, and I thought he definitely put that there because his rig looks good.
Oh.
It's you and your mum and dad, and you got the abs out. I thought that Max's thirst trapping.
Part of it though is that it's actually my mum just hates like photos.
Yeah.
So I actually don't have that many photos with her. Well, I've got them, but there's a lot where she's like, I don't want you to post that. Whereas I'd actually posted that one earlier, so.
Yeah,
I kind of knew I could get away with.
No, but that's cool. But yeah, I mean, what I say, it's like no one's business. I think the only thing that you did wrong, and this is something that was out of your control completely, is growing up in the public eye.
Yeah.
As a consequence of your dad's job, which is incredibly unfair.
Yeah.
But the business is going good. Obviously, it's been good the last few years, but now we're at the part of the property cycle. It's like you'll know this more than me, but it's like very, very predictable, the property cycle. Like there's a period in it where anyone can make money, and now we're at the time now where like people sort of get exposed.
Yeah, I mean it's like the old saying, you never know who's swimming naked till the tide goes out.
I've never heard that, but that's a good one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's weird. I mean, it depends who you ask. I think it's easier to make money in a down market than it is in an up market. Because in an up market, like and this is what really annoys me, is for the last few years, everyone's like, oh, it must have been so easy to make money. But every site I bought for the last like 3 years, and I think we bought 20, every single one I walked out and I was like, oh my God.
Oh, you paid more than what you wanted.
I paid way too much.
So you're talking about buying like a site that's got like a small house on, and you bulldoze the house and put like a few.
Yeah,
there
like I
instead.
might build
Okay.
8 or 10 or 3 or.
Right.
But every single one, every single house I bought, I was like, oh God, like.
You felt like you got fucked over on the sale price.
I was just like, why did I pay that much? I'd go in being like, I pay 1.3 and I'd pay 1.4 because, you know, like you'd buy something for 3.2 and then you'd be like, oh God, like every single one. And then, we were making like pretty good money the last few years, and everyone was like, oh, that must have been so easy. But man, materials were going nuts. There was COVID, like thought you were overpaying for everything. Like, and everyone goes, oh, it's real easy to see the down market coming. For the last 2 years, I've been like tracking it, being like, I'm not sure when. And Dad kind of made me, I won't give away all the trade secrets, but Dad made me sit there and go, I want you to analyze every down market that's ever happened in New Zealand, because he's like, there's a trend. He's like, you got to find it. So I literally went through all the data of like property things, property crashes, and I found one thing that was consistent in every single one. And I pretty much put it in, and I just tracked this one stat. And the moment it hit like a figure, I was like, this is when it's going to turn. And it hit last November. And from that day, I didn't buy anything. I sold everything. Like everything that was done, I sold. Anything that I was doing pre-sales on, I sold. So we got out of everything pretty much at the top of the market. And then from that day, it's only trended down. But it's complicated because at the same time, I have 13 employees, you know, building 186 homes. I have contractors. So I've still done stuff since then because you have to turn it over.
Yeah.
But it's been different to the last few years where when you were making money, now we're just doing stuff just to survive for the next few years and then pick it back up.
Yeah. Is this you for the foreseeable future? Or
Yeah.
is this another Max Key phase?
Nah, this is like
the
40.
bloody swimming and the softball and...
The difference with all those things, I think why I got eventually unmotivated with those things was I didn't see the long-term goal with it. Say with baseball.
You sort of reached your peak, you mean?
Yeah, well, I was like, I'm not going to be a pro baseball. I don't even want to be. Well, I did when I was like young, but I was like, it's actually a really tough lifestyle. Like professional sport's ruthless. Like I have so much respect for guys that actually do it. It's tough. I mean, there's always someone younger, better. You know, if you go through a slump, you might get fired.
Oh, it's a hell of a game. I mean, at the time of recording this, just yesterday, Martin Guptill, who's been a black cap for the last 10 years, he's been axed for the summer series.
Oh, shit. That's
Yeah, it's brutal. And
Yeah.
you have the coach on TV talking about why he's replaced you with someone younger.
Yeah, and it's brutal. And so I think with all those things, I've just got unmotivated with the sport because, maybe I hit my like physical potential, or as I said, there was only so much I could train, or, for all those things. Whereas with this, it's a bit different because I want to be in property for the next 40 years. I'm not saying I'm going to build 3-bedroom townhouses for the next 40 years. Maybe I'll get into commercial property, or maybe I'll do big land subdivisions. I have no idea where it's going to take 2 years ago, I was doing villa renovations. And I was like, I'd never build a new build. And now I'm doing 186, So I think it will keep reinventing itself. But I love the industry, and, I'm loving my company. And yeah, it's definitely something I will be in for a very long time. But how that looks in 10 years, God, I have no idea.
Who knows? Who knows? Do you think the property prices will keep sort of doubling for the next 10 years? If you look in like past history, like the last 40 years or whatever, they tend to sort of double in price more or less every 10 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that, I feel like we can flip over one more time, maybe 2 more times, but then what do you think?
So I think that's an interesting question. That's kind of like the money question. So for it to double every 10 years, that's roughly like 8% compounding.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, every year by that metric, you're getting like 8% rise in prices. So in, say, the last 2 years, you've seen 30% or 50% or, different areas of, had different prices. But my prediction on it, and this is just my opinion, I see in the next couple years, I don't necessarily see this big crash everyone's talking about, but prices might not move for 2 years, which with interest rates and inflation, your real value is going down technically. Like in a real money sense, you're losing money. But in terms of actual house price, I don't see you own a $1.7 million house, it's going to be worth 1.2. Because this is the big thing. Obviously, that's ignoring that you can't pay your interest and you get like mortgagee sold and you have to sell because you have no money. Because at that point, at the moment, the market's illiquid. So yeah, there will be people that will crater their house prices. But that's not because of the market stuff. That's because personal circumstance.
Yeah.
My view on it is, if you said to me right now, say like this apartment building room right now, if you said, how much would it cost you to rebuild this? Well, there's no way I could rebuild this right now for what the guy built it for. So why would he sell it any lower than the replacement value? Because from a building perspective, you can't replace it.
Yeah.
And so there's a point where, okay, prices might not go up and they should go down. But what will happen eventually is people will go, well, I don't want to buy this because I don't want to build a new house because it's going to cost me like so much.
It's just too much.
And so what happens?
Sums don't work.
Yeah, and so then the suppliers like myself, we stop building for a bit. But then all that means is there's no supply, but the demand will keep going. So then that brings prices back up. So I just don't see how prices could ever go down. The only way I see prices actually ever moving is if material prices go down. But they're only ever going to keep going up. There's no way that timber halves in the next 5 years.
No, and of course, even with just inflation.
Inflation, it will just keep going. And so, in my view, all that will happen is supply will fluctuate depending on the demand. And at the moment, you got this massive disequilibrium where the vendor's expectation, are completely different to what they'll probably actually sell it for, and that's why nothing's moving. But eventually, then what happens is, you've seen Williams Corp go from 800 to 500 homes. We're reducing how many we're doing. No one's going to be going, oh, let's buy 50 sites right now. So supply in 18 months will massively reduce. And then what will happen is, say that the market starts picking up, interest rates have kind of at least somewhat got more stable. Well, from there, it's like, at that point, the market will, demand slowly starts creeping up. And then if there's no supply, that brings price back up. And that's what I see happening. I just think for the next couple of years, it might just be a bit more quiet.
Yeah, absolutely. And prices going up and down. No one actually loses or makes money until you sell, do you?
Well, and that was my point, is if you get like a hospital pass and you have to sell, like say you get divorced and
or lose your job.
Or you can't, you over leverage yourself. That's the whole swimming naked thing. And so that's where at the moment you're seeing these people that got caught short, say they're borrowing. Well, think about it. You had $1 million mortgage at say 2%. And that might have cost you $20,000 a year. Well, if you have a household income of 100, it's pretty easy. Well, that mortgage in 6 months might be $80,000 a year.
Yeah. Well, as soon as those people go off fixed, eh?
Yeah. Well, how are they going to pay that? And so then what happens is they go, I have to sell. And this is the thing with property. And this is what I always get into arguments with people about. They always go, is my house going to be worth less? I don't think the value of your house ever changes in my eyes. What I think changes is all that matters at the end of the day is what will someone pay for it on the day. And the market's never wrong. If you listed this house or this apartment right now today, whatever someone pays for it, that's the market. Because on that day, that's what people are actually willing to pay for it. And so in my eyes...
Oh, you sound like a real estate agent. That's so annoying. Well, that's what the market tells us it's worth.
Yeah, but it's true though. Like, you can do all these spreadsheet exercises and be like, I think it's worth 1.4. But at the end of the day, it's what will people on the day pay for it. And so right now, you've got so much supply on the market. There's hundreds of homes everywhere, and there's not that many buyers, so they have ample choice. So if I had 100 iPhones and I came to you and I went, I'll sell you this phone for $100, and I've got 100 of them, well, are you going to be in a rush to buy it? No. Whereas if I go, I'll give it to you for $80, you might go, I'll think about it, actually. That seems kind of good. Whereas if I come to you and I go, this is the last iPhone in the country, it's worth $100, but I have 50 people outside right now waiting to buy it, and if you don't buy it, I'll sell it to one of them, 110. Well, you'll buy it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's literally what's happened in the property market. Last year, there was no supply. I listed a house in Mount Albert. There were 3 homes in Mount Albert for sale at the time. There were hundreds and hundreds of buyers. You had low interest rates, cheap money, everyone wanting to buy like a tangible asset. Prices went through the roof. And now you just have crazy amounts of supply because everyone's going, holy shit, I can't afford my mortgage. I want to get out. And so they're trying to sell. And then now supply's gone through the roof, and then buyers sit there and go, well, I don't need to buy something that's well priced. I'll get a deal. And then eventually what happens is the people start bleeding and they go, holy shit, I can't afford my mortgage. And they go, I just have to get out. And then the banks call and go, well, you owe us $800,000. So if you sell it for 801, you're taking that. And that's the whole thing that's where real estate agents get annoying, but it's true. That's the market.
Yeah.
And if you went right now, I have to sell this apartment tomorrow. Well, at that point, the price is probably much, much, much. It's like you own a car.
Yeah, it becomes like a fire sale situation, doesn't it?
Well, it's all well and good that it might be worth $100,000, but that doesn't mean someone's going to pay that.
Yeah.
And then if it's like, it's all about liquidity. If you need that money soon, well, you have to get someone to hit the bid. And to do that, you have to lower your price. And so that's why I think it's complicated. I don't think house prices decrease. I just think the real value of what people are willing to pay decreases.
Yeah.
But eventually, as I said, then supply will stop and then it flips and then it goes back up.
God, I can tell you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
You're into it, eh?
Yeah, I love
you
it.
You love it.
Yeah.
I haven't even asked you, what's your relationship like with running? Do you run at all? Has running ever been part of your life?
I'm a terrible runner, if I'm being honest.
You've never done it for fitness? You don't enjoy it?
I get really, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's shin splints. I get really tight shins when I run. And so I've just, you know how some people, I'm sure you, glide on their feet and it looks all majestic. I am boom,
it doesn't.
Boom. I'm heavy as, it's just not something I don't know. I was always a good swimmer, but yeah, running's never been, I like sprinting and explosive stuff, but.
The shorter the better.
Well, I'd always go through these phases where I'm going to be a runner, I'm going to get into it. And man, I just would get this pain in my shins. I don't know what, I think I have
What would Sensei say? Just run through it?
He would. And I did that. And then I got to a point where I couldn't bloody walk. So I don't know. I think I have something where my knees hyperextend backwards or something. And that does something to my ankle. And then that causes, I don't know what it, but I think I could probably get shoes that, because I had a friend that had something similar and he got some implant in his shoe and it fully fixed it.
Right. Well, I'm glad I left the run chat to the end. There was a bit of a dead end, not a lot there. And last one, how's your love life? Are you in a good place at the moment? Are you seeing anyone?
Nah, very single.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And happy to be single?
Yeah, I mean,
do you find it hard to meet genuine people, or is that something that plays in the back of your mind? Or can you sort them out fairly quickly?
Yeah, I used to find that. I think now I roll in circles where I meet the right people and, I'm not actually too worried about that. Have
you got because you seem like a bit of a goal setter and a planner, have you got a figure in the back of your mind, by the time you're 30, you want to be with, because your parents were quite young when they got together, right?
Yeah, they met when they were 15 and 17.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
It's a great relationship too. A lot of people that meet that young, they just end up growing apart.
Well, and that's what I think my sister and I find hard, was we always had this preconceived idea that, you need to be with someone for 20 years and 50 years and you find the one. And
well, ideally though, I think that's what everyone sort of wants, don't they?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Half of me loves being single and half of me kind of...
Yeah, because you're a party boy.
Yeah, I love it.
You're that party boy.
All up in there, yeah. Part of it's like I don't really have time. Like I found I've been dating some people this year, and like I probably, I wasn't giving them enough time, and my mind would be on business and the jiu-jitsu. Or I feel like when I was younger, I really tried to make relationships work. I've always felt like it's the one area of my life I haven't succeeded in. Like I've always done well in business, I've always done well academically in sport, but I've had shocking relationships.
Yeah. Well, I feel like everything and everyone sort of comes into your life at the right time for the right reason.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll meet a person when you least expect it who's just equally as driven, that also doesn't have that much time for a partner.
Yeah, well, that's where it's been hard, is I've dated people that are very goal-driven and similar, and, sometimes that clashes. And then I've dated people that are really chill and the complete opposite of me, and then, that kind of, I don't know, like, yeah, it's weird. But I'm not, when I was younger, I used to hate being single, whereas now, like, I don't even go out, or I'm not on dating apps or anything. But I'm kind of just, like, loving my life.
Yeah, did you find that, was that a blessing or a curse to go on, like, dating apps?
Well, half the time people would just think I was, like, a fake profile.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But, I mean, like, I had success on there, like, I guess having the public profile helps, but...
Yeah, there must have been a time there where your DMs were crazy.
Yeah, no, definitely when I was younger. But now, like, I just don't really elicit that kind of attention from people now. So, I don't really notice it. And I feel like social media's changed a lot. I don't know about your engagement, but mine's, like, gone down a lot. And
on Instagram, yeah, definitely.
yeah.
I've been sitting on the same number for maybe 6 months.
Yeah, no, I think
yeah.
for, like, 2-3 years I've kind of been... and even, like, I find, like, my engagement on, like, people don't reply to as much stuff, or... I just think the algorithms change.
Yeah, sure.
But, yeah, so I think, I don't know. I'm just at a point now where I'm really, like, I do what I want, and if someone wants to fit into that, that's cool, like... But if not... it's like with what I post, I don't sit there and go, oh, like, I wonder if a chick thinks this is cool, like... I'm like, I'm interested in this, so if you want to follow me, like, I'm going to post it. Whereas...
Yeah. I believe that about you. I believe you're at a point now in your life where you genuinely don't care too much about what other people think.
Nah.
Because, yeah, I mean, that tall poppy thing we talked before, I feel like with you're in a lose-lose situation. Like, you set up your own business, and people that hate you are going to be like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, easy to do that when your dad's doing key. And then if the business fails, everyone's like, oh, he'll be fine. He's got his dad. Yeah. So it's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Well,
but
that's why...
You're genuinely not bothered by that now?
Oh, not that stuff. I mean, if I failed a business, I'd be more gutted that my business failed than that some muppet thought like...
The embarrassment factor.
Yeah, I don't care about that. I'd more be gutted. I'd probably lost money at that point.
Yeah.
But, I just think you got to do what you want in life.
Yeah.
Like, I know some guy wants to sit at home and mock what I do, or I'm living my life and he's watching mine. So, to me, failure is not actually something I ever, like, care about.
I think failure is something that I think the whole world would be a better place if people were less afraid of it and more into embracing it.
I'm so
that's
grateful.
Where you learn the most.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for all my biggest failures.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's, like, super cliche, but...
I mean, like, driving to that jiu-jitsu room for the very first time, like, you knew you were heading towards a fail.
I felt like such an idiot.
Yeah,
and I was sitting there, I'd never watched jiu-jitsu. Like, it's not a great spectator sport because, it's very technical, and if you don't... Like, I love it now, but... still not great to, like, if you ask my parents, what's jiu-jitsu, they'll be like, no idea, like,
just rolling around with this blue bathrobe on,
sweaty other guys. Like,
I know, that's good. There's a saying I really like. I saw this on Instagram. It's called the 18-40-60 rule, and it's 18. Everyone worries about what everyone else thinks about them. At 40, people stop worrying about what people think about them and just do what they want. And then at 60, you realise no one was thinking about you at all. Everyone was just busy thinking about what everyone else was thinking about them.
Well, that's actually what I realised, I think, when I was travelling, was I got to this point where the first, like, month I was like, to all my friends, like, every day I'm like, oh my God, I'm here, oh my God. Like, and I was like chatting to my parents, and like, because it was so exciting. And then it got to a point where, like, my parents stopped replying to me. Like, they might reply like a day later, or like kind of ignore what I'd said. Or, and I kind of got to this point where I was sitting there, I was like, holy shit, like, my own parents don't really care.
They're bored of your travels.
Yeah, and I'm like, so why would some guy I've never met in Ponsonby give a fuck? Like, and that's literally what got me to the point where I was like, why? Like, I'm like, why do I care about social media? Because back then I was just doing it not for, like, attention, but it was kind of just for validation. Whereas now with social media, like, people go, oh, he's back on it, blah 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 blah, but it, like, directly impacts my sales. you know, if I can get brand exposure now, I make money. My business does better. Like, there is like a very direct link. And my whole plan all along was always to build a brand and build like a profile. And then I had options, you know, for the rest of my life. I could do exactly what I've done now. And Dad actually, it was really funny because I'm running kind of social media and sales and marketing for our company. Obviously still involved in all the other stuff, but that's kind of that's the team I look after. And Dad actually sat me down the other day because he always used to have a go at me for social media. Like, he'd always be like, why are you doing this? You're so obsessed with this. But I was, again, obsessed with, like, the analytics of it all, not the, like, oh, my God, I got a like. To me, a like was business. And he was like, isn't this funny? He's like, I used to give you so much shit about this. And I used to get so mad at you. And he's like, now you're, like, such a wizard. Like, you just understand it all. Like, you kind of know how to get people hyped. And
yeah, he was probably mad at you, though, like a protective parent sort of thing, because he knew about the negative consequences.
Yeah, totally. And he didn't see the value in it, whereas now I always sat there and went, this is going to be the tool we use. But even in saying that, I feel like social media is dying. You know, I feel like stuff like this is like blowing up. You know, like podcasts and
that long form conversation.
Yeah.
And by the way, thanks for coming on today, because I've have you been on a podcast before, or is this your first one?
I don't think so. I remember I did a thing with Aziz on like mental health.
Right.
And that was like quite a long. I've done like interviews, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I did one with Samantha Hayes, which was quite like a long form conversation. You know, it was like an hour or so. But no, I don't think I've ever done like a podcast.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being here today. I appreciate you being so open. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, like all the times I've met you over the years, from the age of, 14, 13, to now, like you've never been anything but, you know, kind and nice and just a good person.
So, well, thank you for that.
Yeah,
and cheers for having me on. It was cool.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Max Key.